In this hint, we'll be using the concept of comparative advantage, the method that we've learned of calculating opportunity cost, in a simple trade problem, which is similar to one of your homework problems and will hopefully help you understand the basics. In this simple trade problem, we will have two countries and two products or goods produced. So now we have our two countries, machine land and farmland, and we have our two goods, M for machines and F for food. We'll now add the production possibilities curves for each of the countries. So we're going to assume in this example that if machine land produced nothing but machines, they could produce 200 and no food. If they produced nothing but food, they could produce 40 units and 0 machines. So therefore, our production possibilities frontier, and this is supposed to be a straight line and it won't be, is going to look something like that, okay? And intersecting the axis at 200 and at 40. Now let's look at farmland. They can produce only 40 if they produce nothing but machines, and they can produce 200 if they produce nothing but food. Therefore, their production possibilities frontier is going to look like that, intersecting the food axis at 200 and the machine axis at 40. So those are our production possibility frontiers with no trade. That is when they are on their own. Now we're going to look at the possibility of these two countries trading together. What should they do? So now we're going to calculate the opportunity cost for each of the countries of food and compare who has the lowest opportunity cost for food. Now, for machine land, the opportunity cost of food in terms of machines, we use the formula given up over gained. As you move down this curve, what are you doing? You're giving up machines and you're gaining food. So as you move down this curve, we will calculate the opportunity cost of the food that we're gaining in terms of the machines that we're giving up. So the easiest numbers to use for straight line production possibility frontiers are simply these axis numbers. So to go from here to here, machine land gives up 200 machines in order to get 40 units of food. So therefore, the opportunity cost of food in terms of machines is 5. Now let's look at farmland. For farmland, as they move down this curve, they have to give up 40 units of machines in order to get 200 units of food. So we have 40 machines given up divided by 200 units of food that are actually gained. Now, these are per unit opportunity costs, right? What is the per unit opportunity cost of food in terms of machines given up? And here we have 1/5. So clearly, the low opportunity cost producer of food is farmland. What this means is that farmland should be the one to specialize in food, okay? And since there's only two goods, that means that machine land should be the one to specialize in machines. Now, when they do that, if they completely specialize, what do we see? Well, machine land would produce 200 machines, and farmland would produce 200 food. So now let's talk about what the trade might be. So here is our beginning points for machine land and farmland. Let's say that machine land began on their own production possibility frontier without any trade at point A. And they were producing along their own production possibility frontier, and they had chosen this combination, 100 machines, 20 units of food. Farmland over here also operating without any trade, were along their production possibility frontier, and they were producing and consuming 10 units of machines and 150 units of food. So now we're going to open up the possibility of trade. Recall that we discovered that farmland had a comparative advantage in the production of food because they had the low opportunity cost of food. And by the way, we know then that machine land has the comparative advantage in the production of machines because there's only two goods in two countries. So let's focus on food first. That means that farmland will specialize completely in food, and this means that they will produce at this point where it's 200 food and no machines, while machine land is going to specialize in machines and produce 200 machines, and therefore they will be at this point on their production possibility frontier. So we have machine land producing 200 machines and farmland producing 200 food. Now let's say that they do a very simple trade. They agreed to trade at the rate of 1 for 1. So machine land says, I will trade you 50 machines for 50 units of food. And farmland says, okay, I'll trade you 50 food for 50 machines. After each country has made this trade, we can see that they are each better off than they were before. In the case of machine land, they now have, the 200 that they specialized in machines minus the 50 that they traded away. That leaves them with 150 machines, and what they got for their trade was the 50 food. So they're at 150 and 50, which is point B, the red point here, and that is got a little bit more food and more machines than they had before, so they're clearly better off. So let's take a look at farmland. Okay, farmland over here, they are now at this point right here, point D, and they have 50 machines and 150 food because they specialized at 250 food. After they traded away 50 of those, they still have 150 food. And in return, they got their 50 machines, which is exactly what they have here. Now, in their case, they have clearly more machines than they did before, from C to D, and they have the same amount of food. So they are also better off. We refer to this phenomenon as gains from trade. Both countries are better off as a result of their specialization and trade. A final way of looking at this that might be helpful is to think of drawing each of these countries' production possibilities curve on the same graph and then drawing a combined production possibilities frontier. So in this graph, I've drawn machine land's curve, okay, which is this brown one, and it goes from 200 on the machine axis to 40 on the food axis. And then also farmland's individual no trade production possibilities frontier, where there's 40 on the machine axis and 200 on the food axis. And then this green curve is our combined production possibilities frontier when we get together and trade with these two countries. And so we can see that if both of the countries did nothing but produce machines, they would be at 240, 200 from machine land and 40 from farmland. And for food, they would also be at 240, 200 from farmland and 40 from machine land. So 240 machines, 240 foods are possible. But also we have this point here, this red point, which is our point of complete specialization that we just discussed. This is where machine land specializes in machines, producing 200 of them, and farmland specializes in food, producing 200 units of food. So this point right here is the point of complete specialization. And we can see that this opens up more territory here in terms of total production of these two goods so that the two countries can then share them in a way where they both reap gains from trade.